welcome back. And again, thank you for the comments, the likes. It feels kind of cool that people are actually watching these videos, and it's not just me talking to myself and then I watch myself back on YouTube. So it's really cool. So thank you again for all of your comments, your likes, the subscribes. It's just brilliant, and it encourages me to keep making some of this content. And if there's anything that you want me to cover outside of my own personal experiences and some of the changes that I'm making to my life, please let me know and I'll try and cover that in future videos. But for this video, what I thought I would do is talk a little bit more about business in Cambodia, talk a bit about passion and why it's a good idea to combine your passions with what you do for a career. And true to form, I thought I would take you on a little trip. This time, rather than wander around the markets or the temple, I thought I would give you a special treat and wake up tomorrow super early to video sunrise, either at Angkor Wat or one of the surrounding places. So whilst the sun is rising, I'll be back and talk to you a little more about my business here in Cambodia, why I decided to do what I'm doing, and also, if you're interested, and I'll put this at the end of the video, how simple it was to register and set up a company, what the cost implications were, what are the ongoing monthly requirements in terms of reporting and tax, and any other bureaucratic regulations that you need to comply with in order to be able to set up and register a business. We all have our own passions in life, whether this be cooking, sport, movies, socializing, golf, biking, walks in the countryside. The list is truly endless, and we all have different passions. They are as much a part of our individuality and identity as is our fashion sense, our appearance, and our personality. The great news is that we can turn these passions into a fulfilling and rewarding career that brings happiness into our daily lives, as well as a more productive and rewarding means of paying the bills. If you love cooking, why not look into opening a restaurant? Sports. There are thousands of careers linked to sports outside playing professionally. If you enjoy the outdoors, arrange tours. You get the idea. When you love what you do, it's not work at all, and you bounce out of bed in the morning excited about what the day will bring. For those of you that struggle to find motivation, I would suggest that you are not finding happiness or interest in what you do, as much like me in my career before, I had veered from the path. So, why not look again? When I moved to Cambodia in 2020, I took some time to think about what makes me happy and how I could make a career from my passions. I realised that the career path I had taken back in the UK was in part aligned to my love of being around people, building relationships, supporting others to achieve their goals, travel and new cultures. I had, though, come off this path when my career in sales and marketing progressed into more senior roles. This took me away from the part of the job that I loved. As I progressed within the organisations that I worked for and became the director of sales and marketing in different organisations, my job was largely office-based and problem-solving. I moved away from business development and travel and into a role where I was responsible for the P&L of the business and a large team. For those of you that know me, you'll know that I'm not afraid of hard work, but the 100-hour weeks in a role that was not fulfilling, coupled with the stress and pressure to achieve company goals and deadlines, was not working for me. In fact, it was the catalyst to the depression that I experienced and ultimately my reboot in life. So the good news for me, after this deep dive into my passions, is that I wouldn't need a complete change in direction. Just a refocus to return to the parts of a career in sales and marketing that I loved and was good enough to have risen through the ranks. Step 1 complete. That's what I'll do. Now, how do I make that work in Cambodia without a huge budget or upfront setup costs? I had for many years been moved by different organisations to new countries in a greenfield kind of way to establish and grow business in new territories. For leading brands, international growth was the best way of growing their revenue and profitability when their domestic markets became saturated. I loved this part of the job. So again, if you remember my passions, this part was perfectly aligned to my love of relationship building, being around people, supporting businesses or people to achieve their goals, experiencing new cultures, and travel. So I had it figured. I would hit the rewind switch on my career and focus on the past parts of my job that were aligned to my passions, and set up a business to represent brands looking for a presence in the APAC region. I just needed to find some brands that would have the confidence to work with me and a belief that I would be able to scale something both responsibly and aligned to their growth objectives. Fortunately, I had made some great friends from the period I was based in Asia, and given the time that had passed since I last worked with them, they had also moved into senior roles. They supported my business model through giving me references that would and did help me to secure my initial brand partners. Today I work with a very small number of leading consumer tech and fashion brands. I work freely and around my agenda. I give myself time these days to focus on myself, and the work-life balance is much better. I travel through the region meeting key retail and distribution partners, and I've been having a huge amount of fun, and the brands that I'm working with are experiencing growth. I wake up every morning now excited about what the day will bring and what new experiences will I have related to the relationships that I am forming. You know, when you love what you do it so much better. In 2022, I registered a management consultancy business in Cambodia that allows me to invoice the brands for my time, remain legal in Cambodia, and be able to secure visas that allow me to remain in country without having to do border runs. So to summarize, if you are unhappy in what you are doing, think about your passions in life and figure out what you can do to make them a part of your working life. Work isn't work when you love what you do. Take 2 of this part of the video. I recorded it all and was zoomed in to literally just my mouth. But this part of the video is actually a little bit complicated, so I've made some notes to make sure I don't forget anything. This part of the video is about forming and registering a business in Cambodia and some of the ongoing obligations that you have both monthly and annually to keep that business compliant. So firstly, I think the first thing to say is that I partnered with a company to help me set up the business. And I think there is a number of benefits to working with an external company to help you. Firstly, the requirements are mainly in the Khmer language, and unless you speak Khmer, it can be very complicated, and any mistakes that you make in filling out the forms and submitting the documents could come back to bite you later. The market entry company, and I'm happy to make an introduction because they are awesome and were recommended by friends, But they also supported and guided me through the process using their connections. And for those of you that understand and know what it's like to live in Asia, you'll know that very often it's not what you know, it's who you know. So who they knew helped me to get the process expedited and managed quickly and effectively. And the whole process was largely smooth sailing. They were also able to come with me to visit some of the ministries where, again, communication was in Khmer. So this was the process as I remember it. Now, it's 2 years ago, so I'm hoping it hasn't changed, and I'm hoping that I haven't forgotten anything. But the first step was to register the business name. And it was a little bit more challenging than I thought. I had to revise the name of my company several times because it didn't comply with regulations or what was expected from the Ministry of Commerce. But once I landed on a name that worked for the Ministry of Commerce, I had to pay a fee, and I can't remember how much that was. It wasn't a huge amount, to hold that name for 2 weeks whilst I started the formation process. And if you take longer than 2 weeks, you then have to go back through the process of re-registering a name. So I'd suggest that you get on fairly quickly once you've decided and got your business name approved. Next up was to decide on the type of company that you wish to register, and there's a few different options. Got a little bit confusing, but thanks to the guidance and support of the market entry company, I landed on a structure that was best for my business type. So I registered a limited liability company, and I appointed myself as the resident director, legally responsible in all ways for the business and any liabilities. It's worth noting here that you do need a resident director or someone based permanently in Cambodia in case there's any need, and they do check to make sure that you are local still, in case they need you for any approvals or any documents. So then came the Articles of Association, which covered the registered capital, and it's a minimum of $1,000. And this document frames your activities, so what you do and how you do it. It also covers, in the case of shareholders, how dividends are paid and the names and addresses of all of your shareholders. Then came the registered business address, and in Cambodia you can't operate a business from home unless it's registered as a business premises. So the market entry company also operates a co-working environment and fixed offices. So they were also able to support with this and provide the images that were necessary, as well as the business license to put a check in this box. You do need to maintain this address for the life of the business, and again, it is checked periodically, so it's important that you register an address that you intend on staying in. So I continue to pay for my office, and I'll come to that in the monthly expenses. Then comes the final registration process. So once the steps that I've just covered off have been completed, you can then go on to register with the government authorities. So I had to visit some of them in person, but I can't really remember which ones I did visit. And it was more of a picture-taking exercise. So it was holding up a document and taking a picture with the emblem of that particular ministry behind me. But again, I didn't go alone and was supported by the market entry company, who were able to communicate with the government offices in Khmer. I do remember visiting the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Administration and General Affairs, and after registration I needed to meet with the Ministry of Taxation to receive my company patents tax certificate and VAT registration. So that's, I think, kind of got us through the complicated part. And from there it was largely smooth sailing. So I had to get the company stamp, I had to register a bank account, and you need to have the official documents from the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry of Taxation to do this. And my process was a little bit simpler than some, because I don't have any employees. I'm the sole director of this business, so I don't have to register with the Ministry of Labour, and I don't have to register for NSSF, which is the National Social Security Fund. So a little bit simpler. So that was the process, and I think all in, excluding the fees that I paid to the different agencies, having the registered capital in the bank of $1,000, I think we put a bit more than that in because I have a few different directors of my company. But all in, the market entry company charged around $3,500 for supporting me through that process, and it was money well spent. I can rest easy knowing I have a business that's set up properly, that covers my type of activities, and that legally protects me and frames the business in such a way that I'm not liable for everything that could go wrong. In terms of ongoing costs, I've broken this down into monthly and annually. So monthly income and expenses need to be submitted to the tax office in Khmer in quite a particular way. So they have their own filing system in Khmer. So I provide my accountant, and it's an accountant that, again, I can make a recommendation for. But my accountant gets my invoices, my expenses, and then they format the report to Khmer requirements for the submission. You prepay tax on profit at 1% of revenue. So whatever you've invoiced that month, 1% is taken as a prepayment of tax on the year-end figure. And outside of that, I typically pay 15% of whatever I've paid myself as the resident director fee, which they called withholding tax. The accountants charge me $165, including VAT, for that service. I also need to pay to the market entry company a fee for my office space within their environment, and that cost me also $165 a month, including VAT, for that service. I also need to pay to the market entry company a fee for my office space within their environment, and that cost me also $165 a month, including VAT. So that's monthly expenses. Then we come on to the larger annual expenses. So once a year, the company accounts have to be submitted to the Ministry of Taxation to calculate tax on profit, which is typically 20%, less the 1% that you've been prepaying monthly. So this is quite a labour-intensive process, but fortunately, my accountant provides bookkeeping services, so they do all this for me. And they charge me approximately $1,200 plus VAT, plus obviously I then pay any profit to the Ministry of Taxation that's due, or a percentage of that profit. And from 2022, and this is where it got a little bit complicated, we then also had to submit a similar set of documents to the ACAR, which is the Accounting and Auditing Regulator, but no, that's more for compliance, so there's no tax due, but the accountant charges me a similar amount, so approximately $1,000, for submitting these reports to the ACAR. So I guess all in, for my annual reporting, I pay around $2,000 to the accountant for bookkeeping and submission of the tax return. Other than that, monthly costs, so I have to renew my annual costs. I have to renew my patent tax certificate once a year, which allows me to stay a registered business and pay tax, and that cost me $300. I always found it a bit strange that I have to pay tax, but that's a regulation in Cambodia. And I think that's it. So you can go and lie down now, because I know it was a lot of information to take on board. I feel exhausted as well. But it really is, it sounds a lot more complicated than it was, because I had a company to walk me through and guide me through the setup process. So whilst I was doing all these steps, I had my hand held at every part of that process. So it was a lot more simple and straightforward than I think had I have tried to do it myself. And I don't think I could have done it myself, because my Khmer is terrible. So that's it. That's how I set up a business. That's what I pay monthly and annually for maintaining that company. So I hope that was helpful if you are thinking about setting up a business in Cambodia. That information is 2 years old, so it's worth checking. to make sure that there's no other steps that have been added to the formation process. And like I said, I'm more than happy to make an introduction to a company that I've used and I trust to help guide you through that process. But until next time, thank you very, very much for joining me, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next video. Thank you.